So good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us. I'm Stacy Smith, Director of Outreach and Events for Regional Manufacturing Institute of Maryland. We are all gathered here today for our Champions of Maryland Manufacturing webinar number 4, which is focusing on workforce. And the purpose of our Champions program, we hosted it last year, albeit a virtual program, where we invited those that are in the manufacturing industry who have done some noteworthy things related to manufacturing to submit their stories. And we categorize them in 7 different categories, including the workforce category. And today we're highlighting some of those with remarkable stories, some of whom actually won our People's Choice Awards when we did the public voting for the best champions in this category. And so we've invited them and a couple others to join us here today to talk about what they've done and some of the lessons learned, and just share some exciting things about what they've done on the workforce front. Before we get started, just a little bit of housekeeping. If you can keep your microphones muted and computers, cell phones muted unless you're speaking. The way that we're going to collect any Q&A or comments from the audience is to submit them through the chat feature, and we will be reviewing that throughout the program. Our moderator, Michelle Welly, who we'll introduce in a minute, may interject during the program with some of your comments or questions, or may save it for the end. We'll definitely have a Q&A period at the end. So thanks for joining us. I want to thank a couple of our sponsors. As you can imagine, programs like this aren't possible without some financial support and partner support from the community. And one of our biggest supporters has been Maryland MEP. And I know we have Mike Kelleher on, who is the executive director for MEP. Mike, do you just want to say hello? And then I know we're going to turn it over to Becky to say something.
Yeah, Thanks, Stacy. Good morning, everybody. And as always, I know most of you who are on. Maryland MEP is always happy to and proud to be a partner and sponsor of RMI and the great events that they put on. So we're looking forward to a great program today and listening to what the panelists have to say. So thanks for having us.
Thanks for the support, Mike. We appreciate it. And Becky Kemp, we're going to have her as part of our panel. But Becky, do you want to just say a few words about MEP for us and your role there?
I would love to. Thanks, Stacy, and thanks to Mike. RMI has been a valuable partner of Maryland MEP, and all MEP centers across the country share a national network. And our mission is really to help with the profitability, growth, and recognition of manufacturing in every state that we're in. We're in every state in Puerto Rico. I'm sure all of you know that we try hard to partner with Puerto Rico, preferably in January or February. Doesn't usually work out for us that way, but that aim to help manufacturers in all aspects of technology and growth and workforce and all areas of their business, sometimes for little guys who couldn't afford to get any help if it wasn't for organizations like the ones many of us represent. And so MEP is proud to be not only a partner of RMI, but a partner with many of the manufacturers in our state and provide to them services that really make a difference to them, their profitability, and more importantly, their longevity in the state of Maryland.
Thanks, Becky. Next, I want to introduce a new partner for RMI, and it's Carroll Fuel Network, represented today by Beth Schneider. Beth, do you want to say a few words?
Hi, nice to meet you. Thanks for having us. We're very excited to be part of the program and looking forward to offering Carroll as a fuel provider for everybody in the manufacturing world. So excited to be here, and thanks for having us.
Thanks. And Carroll Fuel Network has introduced a new program to RMI. I'll send information about it when I send the follow-on email this afternoon with a link to today's program. But we're pretty excited about what they're offering and being able to bring it to RMI members. And our network, actually. And last but not least, we have one of our other great partners who stepped up to sponsor today's program. It's the Economic Alliance of Greater Baltimore, otherwise known as EAGB. And they're represented today by the CEO, Michelle Welly, who's also going to moderate the panel. So Michelle, I'm going to turn the program over to you, say a few words about EAGB, and then take it away from there with your panel.
Thanks, Stacy. As Stacy said, I'm the CEO of the Economic Alliance of Greater Baltimore. We are Baltimore City and 6 surrounding jurisdictions, Cecil, Carroll, Hartford, Baltimore counties, Anne Arundel, and Howard counties. We've got a great partnership with RMI because of the importance of manufacturing as a growth industry in the region. And I emphasize growth industry. Contrary to popular opinion, manufacturing is not dead. It's not dead in the state. It's certainly not dead in the region. And it's one of 7 or 8 industry sectors that we focus on at the Economic Alliance in terms of our marketing. What we do regionally as well as nationally is market the economic assets and opportunities in this region. Again, focused on those 6 or 7 industry sectors, and manufacturing is certainly one of them. So that's a bit of background. Stacy will be sending out more information later, including our website. So I encourage you to go on our website and learn more about our support for manufacturing as well as the other industry sectors. Workforce is an important area for EAGB and many others to focus on, as it's an important infrastructure to support the growth of manufacturing, as well as many other industries. The workforce needed by today's manufacturers and tomorrow's manufacturers is very different than what it may have been a few decades ago. Increasingly, technology is influencing the way manufacturers are designing, developing, producing, and distributing their product. And that requires at least a baseline understanding of technology and even an entry-level job. And you'll hear more about that through the discussion with our 4 excellent panelists today. I'm going to call on Joe Zuccaro first. Joe is on the faculty of Towson University's College of Business and Economics, where he has taught marketing and currently teaches management and leadership, organizational behavior, and strategic management to hundreds of undergraduate business students. Joe, if you want to talk more about the types of courses that you are teaching that relate to manufacturing and introducing another generation to the opportunities available in the manufacturing industry.
Sure. Thank you very much, and welcome everyone. I'm thrilled to be here. I do want to explain to some people who may have I don't want to say outdated, but a different impression of what Towson is, because I grew up in the state of Maryland since I was 5 years old, and I'm a product of University of Maryland at College Park, but now I work at Towson. College Park is 40,000+ students. Towson's a modest 23,000 students. But the College of Business and Economics is, so people understand where I'm coming from, it's accredited by the Association to Advance Collegiate Schools of Business. It is the largest undergraduate program that's accredited by AACSB in Maryland. 95% of our last year's graduates were employed or enrolled in graduate school within 6 months of graduating. Every business student, part of the curriculum is to have an internship for 1 semester, so they get some working experience. There are several certifications that they can get while at the undergraduate program, such as Excel, SAP, that are actually built into courses. I'm really thrilled, and I teach specifically in the Department of Management, but there is a certificate for entrepreneurship. There is a post-baccalaureate certificate in supply chain management, which is relative to the manufacturing world. It's a 15 credit hour certificate. But there's also, just so people know, and I don't think many people are aware of this, I'm not part of this, but it's really cool. There is a supply chain management master's degree at Towson University at the College of Business and Economics that is earned designation as a science, technology, engineering, and math STEM program from the Department of Homeland Security just a couple of years ago. So there's a lot going on. But what motivates me and how I got involved in manufacturing is this realization as I learned more, and I started as an adjunct. I'm now a full-time lecturer. I'm not a PhD. I'm not tenured. I have, a business background. But the realization that about 90% of Towson students come from the Baltimore region and parts of PG, Montgomery, Frederick, but mainly the Baltimore region. And when they graduate, they stay in the Baltimore region, or at least the state of Maryland. And it really made me realize, well, I have to do what I can to help these students learn the lay of the land. Because growing up here, I've been in the business world, I teach, I still realize there's companies I've never heard of. And it's like, wow, I didn't know they've been here since 1920. I didn't know this company was here, and I've grown up here. There's so many companies that are under the radar, and a lot of manufacturing companies like that. By the time I start teaching them in my basic management 101 course, which is the management leadership principles, you're not a business major until you're a junior. A couple of advanced sophomores may become business majors, but mainly you go to Towson, you take biology, English composition, then you declare a major, and you're not really a business major until you're a junior. And in the normal management 101 class, you learn things like teamwork, personality, motivation, HR, planning, performance management, things like that. And when I started teaching, since I wasn't a PhD, I go, what do I do? What do I do? So, you copy another professor's curriculum and okay, we'll do it this way. And when I grabbed someone else's syllabus, there was, the generic research paper about a company. And ultimately students, given their own choices, they're going to pick something they're familiar with. So the big companies, the big brands, Under Armour, Legg Mason, McCormick, Stanley Black & Decker, the Ravens, the Orioles, that's what they pick because they're familiar with it. And I go, there's so much more to what's in Maryland than just all these big name companies. And so when I started altering this project and putting students on teams, I will confess, because I teach 4 sections, it's a lot easier to grade team papers, about 25 teams than it is 100 plus individual papers. So I will admit I'm a little lazy, but I want them to learn teamwork too. But I thought, well, what else can they be doing besides the same Under Armour paper, I got to read all the time. Well, then I realized, there are ecosystems. And you've always heard the phrase small to more, for those of you around Baltimore, where everyone supposedly knows each other. But living here after moving from Montgomery County 10 years ago, small to more isn't that accurate. There are still silos. There are still industries where, people know each other in an industry, but the healthcare industry doesn't necessarily know the software industry, who doesn't necessarily know the supply chain industry. And I thought, I want students to get to know an ecosystem. So a couple of years ago, I had them start doing these, put them on teams, pick a company within an ecosystem. I started with the Port of Baltimore because why are we in Baltimore? Well, it's a port, and there's a port. There's all sorts of things that go on in a port. And that went really well. I worked with the Port Authority, and students, I assign them, instead of having them pick, I assign them. You do Domino Sugar. You do the tugboat company. You do U.S. Customs. You do, the union, the longshoremen union, and the whole ecosystem. So every team got to know a different part of how the port works, and that went really well. So the following year, I go, I'll try something else. I'll try cybersecurity, because that's prevalent in the state, given the federal government and the intelligence community. That was a little more difficult. Cybersecurity companies don't want to talk about themselves that much. So it was very hard, because one of the things I do, I have the students in teams, they have to do a basic research paper. What's the company? What's its background? What industry is it in? What are its revenues? What's its model? What's its business model? Who runs it? What kind of employee base do they have? Who are its competitors? What are big issues in the industry? What has the company been in the news for lately? And they learn basic business research, because, as I said, I can't assume they know how to use a library properly when they finally come into business school. Towson has a dedicated business librarian in what we call the Cook Library. There is a full-time staff that all she does is support the business students and the business faculty with research. solely on business. And a couple of the other colleges have a dedicated librarian, which I think is terrific. I don't ever remember, hearing about that when I was an undergraduate at College Park. So we have this infrastructure to help students learn. I put them in a team environment. A year ago, was it? Yeah, it was a year ago.
Joe, I want to interrupt just for a second because I want to be sure that there's a lot of questions and answers on what you're talking about. But you mentioned a minute or so ago the ecosystem and that cybersecurity is part of that ecosystem. So if you don't mind, I'd like to turn it over to Dr. Nilanjan Banjari, who is focused on that particular issue with manufacturing and his role at the University of Maryland, Baltimore County.
Okay.
Great, but don't go away. I've got lots of questions to ask you. So, so let's switch to Dr. Nilanjan Banerjee, who is a professor at the University of Maryland, Baltimore County, UMBC. He's also an associate director of cybersecurity and manufacturing at UMBC. Cybersecurity, as Joe mentioned, is not an area that's first of mind when one talks about the infrastructure needed to support the growth of manufacturing. But as someone once said to me, if you have data, you need to understand cybersecurity. So any manufacturer that has a computer and puts any information on that computer needs to understand cybersecurity. So Dr. Banerjee?
Great, thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to speak at this panel. So my name is Nilanjan Banerjee, and I'm a full professor of computer science at University of Maryland, Baltimore County, and I mostly focus on cybersecurity problems. So today I wanted to talk about this platform called SciMot, which is something that UMBC, MXD, the Digital Manufacturing Institute out of Chicago, and UMBC training centers are building, have been building over the last year or so. So I have the link to the SciMot website that I put in the chat window just for reference if somebody wants to go up there. So the idea here is to build a competency-based learning management system, which is just focused on cybersecurity for operational technology. So OT cyber is somewhat different from IT cyber, though there are some overlaps between the two. So if, for instance, your shop floor is hacked, then essentially your operations just stop. And there is really a lack, I think, of educational and training resources which are just focused on cybersecurity for operational technology. So SciMot is essentially built around that idea. So what is SciMot and what is the application that we are looking at specifically? So right now we are focusing on upskilling practitioners in the manufacturing industry on cybersecurity for operational technology. So how does this work? So MXT, the Digital Manufacturing Institute, came up last year with this hiring guide called the MXT Job Hiring Guide, which defines very precisely different roles in the manufacturing industry, especially focused on cybersecurity. So just as an example, they define a role for a manufacturing operator, a cybersecurity manufacturing operator. So that role defines things like competencies, job responsibilities, and such. So what SciMot does is takes those role definitions as input, and then takes as input the educational background of a practitioner coming on SciMot. And the goal of SciMot then is to provide a personalized learning plan, which comprises different course modules such that that individual can be upskilled to that specific role in the manufacturing industry. So what is this learning plan? So this learning plan is a set of course modules with assessments attached to it that is offered right now synchronously through the UMBC training centers. But in the future, we are also planning to have hybrid modes of offering the same course modules. So something which includes the instructor in the loop, and what we have found to be very useful when we are providing this training, as well as a mode where there are interactive videos through which a person can learn concepts around cybersecurity for operational technology. So we also have designed a concept inventory for assessment of these learning plans. We call this the manufacturing cybersecurity concept inventory. So what is it? It's a set of scenario-based cyber hygiene questions around cybersecurity for operational technology. So what we do is we have researched the various sorts of cyber attacks that have happened in the past when it comes to CPS systems, when it comes to OT systems. And then we take those scenarios, and based on those scenarios, we have formulated a set of questions which are based on what you would take actions on when that attack happens, both in terms of finding the attack as well as defending against the attack, and what remedial and how do you essentially increase resilience of your OT system. So we use the MCCI as a tool to assess whether the learning plans that we are offering to our students is actually working or not. So SIMOT has been piloted. At least one learning plan for this specific role has been piloted with the help of the membership of MXD. And it was the first cohort went through the first 2 courses. There were about 20 students that went through that cohort, and they included both small, medium, and large manufacturers. Another aspect of SIMOT that we are building now is hands-on exercises, so that potentially once they have learned a specific concept, they can figure out how to use it in practice. This includes tools that we are building using virtual reality, as well as experiential training through gamification. So we are starting a collaboration with PNNL on using some of their game-based scenarios to help individuals go through practical case studies of how they would defend their OT infrastructure. So the other things that we are expanding on right now in SIMOT is, though we started with practitioners in the manufacturing industry as the students, but now we are opening it up to individuals who might actually want to get into the manufacturing industry, maybe out of jobs, but they're interested in cybersecurity, especially OT cybersecurity. We want to upskill them such that once they have gotten a certification through our processes, they can potentially seek a job for that specific role in the manufacturing industry. So I would ask you to go through that website. It's designed in such a way that the concepts around building SIMOT is clear. Also, we have built the learning management system from scratch ourselves. One of the reasons we did that was to collect enough data and run these personalized analytics such that these learning plans that we are offering are personalized to the individual who is being upskilled. So we will be opening this up fairly soon for basically other people to join in as well and go through these cohorts. Yeah. Thank you.
Sorry, a fascinating area that needs more attention for sure. And we will certainly be hearing more from you as we get into the Q&A. Next, I want to ask Neil Christopher to speak about a really fascinating partnership that he's been involved in, both in his previous role, as a COO of Acadia Windows and Doors, and now as the program manager for the Training Institute for the ARC of Northern Chesapeake region. A different focus than what we've heard from Nilanjan as well as Joe. It's something that I'm hoping that more and more manufacturers will understand the opportunities if they're having workforce issues for the type of partnership that Neil is about to describe. Neil?
Good morning and thank you. Things aren't really different now than they were in 2003. But back in 2003, Acadia Windows and Doors, who's been in Eastern Baltimore County since 1947, was looking for some good people. And as there are today, there are workforce issues. We could not find the people we wanted. And since we've been around since 1947, we thought we pretty much hired everybody in Eastern Baltimore County. So we thought we would reach out to Harford County, and we put an ad in the, remember these things, it's a newspaper. We put an ad in the Aegis, which is a local newspaper in Harford County, and we were looking for a different labor pool. We didn't realize how different a labor pool we were about to tap into. So we got some regular responses from the ad that we placed, and we got a phone call from a lady named Jan, and Jan said that represented people that were good workers, and every employer needs good workers. So we were really excited. She had several people that could do the job we had in mind, and we set up an appointment to meet with her. And in the course of that conversation, we found out that the people that she represented were differently abled, and my heart sank. I mean, I really didn't think that manufacturing would be a safe environment for people who were differently abled. We were afraid for their safety. We were afraid that maybe they wouldn't be productive, that the quality wouldn't be good. We had a lot of concerns, but Jan was really smart. She only asked for 15 minutes. And in my mind, 15 minutes was just the right amount of time to brush her off. So we made the appointment, and in the time between the point where the appointment was made and Jan arrived, we had had a discussion with our saw operators, and the saw operators take 16 feet length of material like this and cut it to size. But before they cut it to size, they put in this fuzzy stuff, the insulation that goes in around the window and door. And they were putting that in before they cut the material. And just coincidentally, we had gone to them before and said, what do you need to be more productive? And they said, if you can get somebody to put this fuzzy stuff in, we can fly. And I remembered that the lady from the ARC said that the people she represented had liked repetitive work. And this is the epitome of repetitive work. It doesn't get any more repetitive than this. So a lot of trepidation, we made the appointment. She came in, didn't run screaming from the building as we thought she would. And we met with our whole team. Acadia is a very transparent company. Everybody is involved in decision makings, from entry-level employers to Wink Mather, the owner of the company. And we all met, and we had a lot of questions. We had so many questions that Jan couldn't answer them, but she answered most of them and made an appointment to come back. And 10 days later, she came back and she had more answers because she had resources. She had federal programs and other employers that she had worked with that had the same questions and the same trepidation, because like Wink says, that's the kind of thing that keeps you awake at night. Maybe somebody getting hurt working in a factory environment, and there's punch presses that can cause amputations. There's sheets of glass that are 8 by 10 feet long. Think about that. That's the size of a wall. It's just a lot of ways to get hurt in an industrial environment, as you know. Coincidentally, at the same time, Acadia had partnered with MOSH Consultation. OSHA is a federal program. It's administered on the state level. And MOSH is OSHA in Maryland. And they were working with us to make us safer. And one of the things as we began this partnership with the ARC is we found that everything we did to make it safer for the individuals with differing abilities made it safer for everybody. And once we learned that, we could start to see how not only would the individuals, if it worked out, be in addition to our workforce, but maybe our culture would change a little bit. So with a lot of trepidation, we brought in Robin. Robin was our first employee, and it was her job to put the fuzzy stuff in. She did a really good job. I mean, she worked safely, she worked independently. People liked her. She was part of the team, she fit right in. And after about 6 months, Robin looked around and saw people putting the hardware on the windows and doors. And Robin said, you know, I think I could do that job. And in the back of my mind, I was like, it's more complicated than it looks. There's different iterations of product. There's different hardware that goes with it. It's not really that simple, but things slowed down a little bit like they do in manufacturing. The ARC sent in a job coach, and Robin excelled. She put the hardware on and she did an amazing job. But then we didn't have anybody to put the fuzzy stuff in. So we had to call the ARC again and say, do you have somebody that could do this job? And of course they did. And that's how the program began to grow. As we added people, as they looked around, or maybe their team leaders looked around and identified jobs that they really had a need. Because sometimes people with differing abilities have what I call superpowers. It's that ability to have attention to detail in what most people would find maybe a boring and repetitive job. We have been partnered with the ARC for 3 years, and Jan called. Now we talk on a regular basis. We have about 4 people in the plant that are supported by the ARC. And she said, hey, I have somebody you might be interested in. She's graduating from high school. We think she'd be a good fit. And just making conversation, I said, sure, what school was she graduating from? And Jan said, the Maryland School for the Blind. And I said, Jan, you do know that we make windows, right? And she said, yeah, but she's done repetitive work. She fits in. And we brought Jessica into the building. Jessica put the fuzzy stuff in. She did a really good job. The learning curve was a little bit longer than it had been with Robin, but she was able to be productive, and Jessica is doing that job today. All the people from the ARC are doing the jobs that they started, or they've learned another job and they've moved forward. What we've learned as a manufacturer, and what the ARC has learned about manufacturing in a place for people with different abilities, is these superpowers allow them to do a really awesome job. So think about reliability in terms of safety. People with different abilities don't tend to cut corners. Right now, in Bill Braxton's department at Acadia, Bill Braxton has 15 people in his department. He can pick anybody he wants to train. The last time I was at Acadia, I said, Bill, who do you have training? And he said, I have Eric training. And I said, that's an interesting choice. Eric is supported by the ARC. And Bill said, Eric never cuts corners. Think about that. The value in terms of safety, in terms of productivity, in terms of product quality. Here's a man who never cuts corners. And if you find a better way to do it, it's going to take a longer time to train him, because he really sticks with what he had been trained in originally. That's a superpower, the ability to focus.
I love your use of the phrase superpower, and really eye-opening. I'm sure that this is a potential pool of employees that many people don't or easily dismiss. So we will get back with more questions about this. It's truly fascinating, Neil. I want to turn it over to Becky for a minute, or more than a minute. We heard from Becky Kemp already at the beginning of the program. Becky is a senior executive manager at the Maryland, excuse me, the MEP, Maryland Manufacturing Extension Partnership. Excuse me. Her experience is in a variety of industries, way too extensive to name all of them, and everything from steel to chemical and automotive supply chain. Her work has really saved a lot of companies a lot of time and effort, and allowed them to grow and succeed in their space. So Becky, could you talk a little bit more about some of the things you started to mention at the beginning of the program? And I particularly would be interested to hear if the population that Neil has been working with is a population that more manufacturers are considering, particularly for the types of repetitive jobs that Neil has described.
Well, thanks, Michelle. And thank you for not making all of my experience just add up to the word old. I appreciate that more than you know.
Look, I'm right there with you.
Yeah, I hear you, girl. Neil's population is a wonderful solution to many manufacturing situations that probably is, I think, Neil, an overlooked treasure trove and resource for workforce. If you look today, in the state of Maryland, our unemployment rate is about 6.2% today, which is about on par with the national average. But in manufacturing today, there are over 4,500 open positions in various manufacturing jobs all around the state. Many of them are semi-skilled or skilled positions. Some are requiring certifications. Others of them are certainly ones that Neil's folks would be a great fill and people would be happy to see. The unemployment rate is deceiving, though, in the state today. One of the things that we do in our workforce program at MDMEP is try to take a look at solutions for manufacturers that go into sometimes operations, automation, as well as workforce and workforce development. And what we're finding from many of our manufacturers is they are getting applicants. They are getting people to apply for their positions and show up for a couple of days. And so in the biz, we refer to that as labor churn, meaning that they can't retain their employees. And so why is that? Well, it comes from a number of situations that we've found. One is that they're not hiring the right people. They're hiring somebody with a pulse, which is not necessarily who they need to have working for them. Sometimes it's that the job has been very poorly defined, so it's not a good fit for the individual. A lot of times it's cultural. If you look around manufacturing today, what we know statistically is that the average age of skilled workforce in the state of Maryland is 49 years old, and that's down from 53 just a few years ago. We can credit a lot of programs for bringing that median age down. We can look at registered apprenticeship, which MDMEP is a big partner with our friends at DOL. You can also look at the fact that some of the training programs that companies have kind of built on their own have improved that. You can also take a look at the fact that because for a long time, unemployment was hovered at the 3% mark, a lot of manufacturers were a lot more willing to look at alternative folks and pathways to employment than what we used to have. We also kind of redefined what job ready and what cultural fit means. The other thing that's happened with some of that is that companies are really beginning to embrace and understand how much this is costing them. The average job opening to interview and hire for in the state of Maryland is around $1,750 for a manufacturer. Now, that's one thing if you're McCormick Food, and it's another thing entirely if you're DVF Corporation out in Hagerstown and you have 16 employees to your entire name. That's a lot of money. Hire somebody and onboard them and then have them leave in a week or two, and that cost escalates to $4,000 a person. So labor churn is a big concern right now. The ability to retain employees and keep them is becoming more of an issue than finding some people to come in your front door. The retention rate in manufacturing is in a wide range, and it ranges from about 4% in the best of cases. And now today it's all the way up to 31% in the state. So that's a lot of turnover, especially for companies with small or non-existent HR departments, for companies that have maybe their plant manager doing the hiring. Those are pretty scary statistics. So why are people leaving? Well, for some people, it's certainly the very real fear of COVID-19. We still have a lot of folks that are very concerned about going back to work, and they thought they were ready, and then they get back to work and they're not. In many cases, there is a generational issue between those 50-somethings and the 20-somethings that are coming into work for them, who may have not necessarily changed their approaches, and manufacturers may not have realized they needed to change their approach with their management for some of these younger folks. But the biggest number one reason that we have found for early exit and labor churn is training. The fact that employees, when they leave, anywhere from 90 days to 180 days will say, I didn't really feel like I knew what I was doing. and their companies haven't taken advantages of a lot of the different programs that are out there to help with training. As I said, we partner closely with both commerce and labor, and there are a number of programs. MD MEP ourselves we have earned training money we can provide to companies to help them with incumbent worker training. We have our grant for registered apprenticeship. We're also a registered apprenticeship sponsor. We can help with that. The state and the counties have lots and lots of WIOA programs, and I don't think that it's a tapped in enough resource from the manufacturing network. And Jim will tell you that there are lots and lots of programs on the county and at the city level where Baltimore City is concerned. They can help employers with tax credits and training dollars. But in order to tap into those things, you need to know that you need to do it. And in a lot of cases, our manufacturers just don't know what they don't know. And so that education component, that engagement component, to make sure they know about programs like Neil's working with the ARC, to know that those state and county resources are there, to know that Maryland MEP can help come in and help them with an entire organizational plan that's strategy-based and in align with their strategic plan, or help their HR people, if they have one, understand better how to better hire the right people that will stay and be retained, will help a lot to help manage those costs. A lot of people think that hiring and recruiting and putting people through these programs is just a cost of doing business. Well, that might have been true some years ago, but today the cost has escalated to the point where if you think about the dollars that are on this screen today, because we're all high paid, highfalutin professionals, right? Think of the amount of money that's sitting here right now. Well, imagine being in a company where the plant manager and the HR person and maybe a supervisor or two are all involved with interviewing all these people who keep coming through the door. Those indirect labor costs, which used to be just thought of as a cost of doing business, are no more. They're able to be quantified now with better systems and systems support. So the fact that we've got a lot of programs available helps to focus in on the real core cause of why people aren't staying, and that's training and feeling able to do the job. The other thing where we're all missing the boat is this whole generational gap concept, where we need to start looking at different ways to attract today's workforce to manufacturing, including alternate work schedules, being flexible, allowing people to do more work from home, and also taking a look at what kind of management and supervisory things are we doing to help those folks better manage people that didn't come in with perhaps the same work ethic that they had as baby boomers or even Gen Yers. The millennial and Gen Z crowd is a whole different group, and we got to change and flex with them in manufacturing just the way that we did before. That's one of the values that MD MEP brings to the table for organizations, is our ability to help them find a tailored solution for them that could incorporate a lot of different things.
That is such a need for this industry. And given that point, Becky, I want to circle back to Joe just quickly. Can you, Joe, speak just for a few minutes about the students that you have through your programs? What is their understanding of manufacturing as a viable career pathway for them? And how do you engage more students in the four-year schools, particularly of course Towson, in looking at manufacturing?
Okay, I do think that it's been my perception their awareness of manufacturing in the state is extremely low. And I was leading up to, I finally got the chance to apply my program to the manufacturing industry. I've been in touch with Mike, and I broke down the industry by NAICS codes, and I assigned teams. Okay, you guys do apparel, you guys do transportation equipment, you guys do computer and electronics, you guys do food products. And so I on a weekly basis, I would try to make them aware of local news involving manufacturers. They had to get in touch with an executive in each of these companies. Each team had to contact someone and interview them about leadership, about management, about corporate culture, and about pressing issues they had, such as the pandemic, such as diversity and inclusion. And the pandemic actually, as bad as it is, was a great opportunity to show these students that, hey, here's an industry that's stepping up to the plate. For example, Under Armour pivoted and started making masks. A couple of distilleries in the state, which make booze, started making hand sanitizers. Marlin, which they saw their aircraft maintenance products shrivel up, they pivoted to get involved with test tube racks.
Right.
There's a company out of Elkridge, I think it's called Agam. They make trade show booths, but they pivoted and started making test facilities and vaccination, I guess, pop-up vaccination things. And I wanted to show them, wow, this is an amazing industry. And most of these sectors are represented in the state, and you need to know about them. But the thing is, they're under the radar. They're not like the big ones like Under Armour and Stanley Black & Decker. These are companies that don't get much press, but they are steady and they have opportunities, and they need business students. They need accountants. They need HR people. They need operational people, operation analysts and IT people. So I think it's a tremendous opportunity for these students to become aware, because it's like I said, I think back when I was an undergraduate, I didn't know what was out there. I didn't know the opportunity. So I always try to make them aware of what's going on in their own backyard.
Right, there's definitely a major outreach effort that's needed. And manufacturing is not the only industry that suffers under a perception of being not a viable career pathway. Nilanjan, I'm just curious, you mentioned working with UMBC training centers, and a UMBC training center is a board, an EAGB board member. And I'm certainly familiar with a lot of their training programs, but I was not aware of them working on upskilling focused on cyber ops as opposed to cyber IT. Can you talk a little bit more about that partnership with UMBC training centers and the types of companies that have been in the cohorts?
Sure. So UMBC training centers got involved in this particular program with us. So they have started looking at this right now. They did have a lot of material on cybersecurity in general, cybersecurity for information technology, for instance, which we have leveraged at least for our fundamentals courses. And the course material that we are building for, which are specific to say foundations in operational technology, cybersecurity, is being built from scratch. So, UMBC Training Centers is the platform through which we are offering this course material. So it's a synchronous medium that where there is an instructor. Obviously, this is all online, but there is an instructor who actually interacts with the cohort, and it's a UMBC Training Center instructor. So they are getting involved in this space, and they're a huge asset, I think, for us, because they already have the platform in place to offer these course modules synchronously. So we wanted to do this right away. So we wanted to pilot this like in our first 4 or 5 months, because the need was now, and they were a perfect partner in this. And they've helped us develop the course material as well as offer them through their own platform. And in terms of the cohort itself, right now, we had focused on the MXD membership for students for this cohort. So these are manufacturers who are already in the membership for the Digital Manufacturing Institute. The cohort itself was very diverse, and that was by design. We have bigger manufacturers like Boeing, Dow, Rolls-Royce. We have smaller manufacturers like Itamco, Atlas, and Plethora Corporation. Again, these are not Maryland-based manufacturers, but these came from mostly the MXD membership. So the pilot itself, we made sure that we also had individuals with different levels of expertise in cybersecurity. Obviously, they have experience in manufacturing because they are in the industry, to get some diverse feedback on what the course material is, whether it's useful for them, and how it could be improved. So,
how can we work with the MXD to get more Maryland manufacturers involved with them?
So the SciMod platform itself is a collaboration between MXD and UMBC and UMBC training centers. So in the next cohort, so since we were piloting it for the first time, we looked at the MXD membership to get students right away. But from the next cohort onwards, we are going to open this up. And we had some initial conversation with MD-MEP as well. And there is no reason why students going through the program just needs to focus on the MXD membership. And we definitely want to advertise and use it in Maryland as well. So
great, thanks for that information. For all of you, and Neil, this relates to I think to training people with disabilities for some of these jobs. What we've talked a lot about, those of us who are concerned about workforce issues for all of our industry sectors, not just manufacturing, and the role of community colleges in training individuals who either, for whatever reason, can't enroll in a four-year degree program, but have an interest in manufacturing, and are enrolled either in a community college 2-year program or a certificate program. What more can be done or should be done to work with community colleges for adding additional training, working collaboratively with employers to place individuals in some of those community college programs into those jobs? And Neil, I'm wondering if the ARC has a relationship, or if Acadia does, with any of the community college programs that are focused on various aspects of manufacturing.
Yes, we do. Our own training institute of the ARC NCR has a partnership with Hartford Community College called Access, which stands for a college and career experience for self-sufficiency. The training is important, but the self-sufficiency is also important. Acadia is in Baltimore County, and they have a partnership with Baltimore County Community College and have sent many people to CCBC to learn pretty much whatever we want them to learn. Community colleges will custom tailor programs to what you want taught. At Acadia, it was a need to take people who were entry-level workers and turn them into supervisors, but to follow certain supervisory philosophies of servant leadership. So we partnered with CCBC and developed a curriculum and sent a cohort, several cohorts actually, to learn this. And it was funny because they had been there, the first cohort came back and said, we think that professor must know Wink, who's the owner of Acadia, because he talks just like him. Well, the reason he talked just like him is because we had structured the training program with them so they would understand it. These are mostly non-credit classes. People aren't getting credit for it, but they are done on company time and they're done at company expense, and everybody comes out ahead because even the college, maybe for some of these people, it's the first time they've ever been on a campus, and it might light a fire in them, and they look around and say, wow, this is really cool. Maybe I should come back and take some other courses. And we actually had people at CCBC taking courses at the same time that their kids were taking courses because that trigger had been there. So community colleges for all of us, for manufacturers, for people in the who are supporting people who are differently able, there are tremendous partnerships. And the really cool part about it is community colleges understand workforce. They really understand the needs of employers, and they have their expertise from the academic side, but they also have their expertise from previous partnerships. So
Right.
they worked with other institutes, other colleges, other manufacturers, and other employers, and they know what has worked and they know what doesn't work. So tremendous asset for everybody.
Yeah, I agree. I'm a huge supporter of community colleges, as is EAGB. In fact, Chair Markley Schreiber, our COO, is on the board of the Hartford Community College. Becky, when you're in your work with directly with businesses, do you also collaborate with Maryland WorkSmart, and are businesses open to working with community colleges on what I would call customized training?
We do. We partner with everybody, and certainly the community college network in Maryland in particular is a very valuable asset. Manufacturers are mixed on community colleges. On the one hand, for some of the soft skill managerial things like Neil was referring to, where there's a lot of collaboration and customization, it's a great relationship, and I think they get a lot out of that. When they're trying to get people through registered apprenticeship programs at times where they have a requirement for either a certification program for their company or perhaps even a degree that a student is working on, there, of course, are some issues. Part of that rests on the employee themselves. There are a lot of people who, after they've worked an 8 or 10-hour day, or they're on a mandatory overtime because the company is really busy, have no desire to go to school and sit for 2 or 3 hours after work. That's just the reality of people, right? That's just a reality. From technical training standpoint, some things are wonderful fits and they're great, and other things not so much. The other thing too is that if you look at the geography of our state, if somebody's out on the Eastern Shore and they want something, and that might be an offering that's available in Frederick, that's going to be an issue. Even if they can try to work something out, just the mere drive time is going to be a problem. But the community colleges are a wonderful partner. There are other online options that are available, including community college online options that are also a wonderful alternative. And again, it's just making sure that everyone knows that all these wonderful resources are available to them. And at MEP, what we try to do is be a connector of all those things so that everyone can find everyone in the right platform they need just in time so that they get the right skills at the right time.
Great, terrific. I mean, the MEP's role as a connector is so valuable. I mean, and EAGB also looks at our role as a convener and a connector,
Yeah.
pushing out information, not just to adults, but to kids in middle and high school in terms of what's available to them for post secondary education. So you don't need to necessarily start at a 4-year school. You can start with a credential program at a community college.
You can, and all of the youth and pre-apprenticeship programs lend themselves to that as well,
Right.
and kind of drive students to that direction, which is a huge advantage for everybody concerned.
Joe, I want to punt back to you for a minute or two. I've got probably 2 more wrap-up questions, but I know I cut you off earlier and I wanted to get back to you.
Yeah, thank you very much. But my program, there's 2 things I really want to emphasize. At the end of the semester, after each team has done their research on their particular industry sector in manufacturing, they report back to the rest of the class. So if you did apparel, you're talking about the apparel industry and the company you studied, or if you did, electronics, you did. So the students are still learning about all these other sectors. And one of the best things I did was through RMI's support, we got some guest speakers. We got Greg Chamberlain, who at the time was the VP of HR Global Operations for Stanley Black & Decker, as well as Susie Gans, who's the CEO and chairman of Lion Brothers, an apparel manufacturer. So these students met, top-notch people, executives of these organizations. So they got they got the straight scoop from the leaders of these organizations when it comes to learning about the challenges of making decisions at the top of these organizations.
Thank you.
Mhm.
You know, in terms of workforce, there was a recent study done by Deloitte and the Manufacturing Institute looking at the skills gap for the manufacturing industry. And one of the things, and this is very recent, actually, it was pushed out, I think, earlier this month. And one of the issues that they've identified is the fact that with the pandemic, and as has mentioned before, that the pandemic has also has shown a spotlight on the flexibility and ability to pivot very quickly by a lot of our manufacturers in the region and the state. But also with the pandemic, the supply chain issues, given the pandemic has been global, as well as the absolute exponential growth of e-commerce, and the need for a lot of entry-level jobs to fill the expansion of e-commerce, but also as manufacturers and distribution centers look domestically for filling their supply chain gaps due to the global pandemic. They're hiring individuals again at an entry level. So how do you all view the impact of the pandemic, given e-commerce, what it's done for e-commerce on the positive side, and what it's done to disrupt the supply chain on the negative side? How do you see that impacting manufacturing in terms of the need for both entry level as well as more skilled jobs? Joe, I'm going to let you take a quick minute because I want to get to everybody else as well to your thoughts on that. Joe, I think you're on mute, Joe.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I think the importance really gets underscored because I'm teaching remotely. I'm sitting in my place. These students are sitting at their homes, and I'm trying to explain that's the way it is all across the country with all these organizations. Everyone's split up. The supply chain has been severely disrupted. I talked about the whole microchip situation. We've talked about everything, food processing and the whole chicken shortage, what's happened to lumber. So it's really important to underscore this is the way we're doing it now. We're all remote. When it comes to getting through to people, sending emails enough, you still have to pick up a phone. You use online tools like LinkedIn to reach out to these companies and get to know each other and network. So I think it's been unfortunately an incredible opportunity to learn things because we're in an environment, we're in a situation that no one's dealt with in our lifetimes before. So I try to open their eyes to that and understand that you have to have plan B. You have to be able to pivot. You have to, think strategically. What next? What happens if we run out of supply? We need to, multi-source. We have to have other vendors. We have to look around.
Thank you. Neil, from the perspective of working with a challenged population of employees, you mentioned the one individual, I think his name was Eric, about learning a new skill. Given that there's increasing digitalization of the manufacturing process, are there particular challenges that working with this population present because of that digitalization?
Well, in some ways, the pandemic's been a good thing for us because what it done is propelled us to virtual learning, where we have opportunities, and we've looked at with some of these technologies with the RMI. Mike's actually experienced some of them firsthand, where really what people get is infinite patience, because the people we support, sometimes they can learn the job, but it might take a little bit longer. But if you have a virtual teacher, that virtual teacher never gets impatient, never gets tired, never gets home, and you can repeat that task using virtual goggles and hand controllers, so that you really might be in better shape than somebody who's typically able but hasn't had the advantage of the virtual learning. So there's a lot of opportunities for people who are differently able to ease into the workforce, along with the soft skills that Becky talked about and the things that you can learn. We have a lot of time now that we can work with them virtually, and they're not using any of the employer's time or any of the employer's resources. This is all done ahead of time. And of course, our business model at the ARC is to put people in a job situation with a job coach. But even then, we've shortened the coach's time because the person has all this time to prepare on their own, with the advantage of different technologies that lets them be successful once they're on the plant floor.
Interesting. Elijah, and I would expect that with the increasing digitalization of manufacturing, even at a basic level, but certainly as more and more manufacturers use artificial intelligence and robotics and big data, to do their work more efficiently, that there's more awareness of cybersecurity issues, or is there still a gap in that understanding, Elijah?
So there is a need for better understanding of the cyber gaps. You talked about the pandemic, and I second everything that was said before me. So digitization and better needs for communication between different entities in the supply chain is probably the two big challenges that we need to pivot to. And with that, essentially comes even grave more serious challenges, like you increase the attack surface for your systems. If you have things which are driven by data, which are driven by computers, they can be hacked into. So it definitely increases the attack surface for manufacturers. So at least what we have seen right now through SIMOT is people are more aware, because almost every other day you hear about a threat or an attack on the manufacturing ecosystem. So the awareness is increasing, and there is a thirst to essentially make sure that your workforce is at least understands what good cyber hygiene is, for instance. So training programs around such entities, even if it's not advanced cybersecurity, I think at least simpler cyber hygiene principles, training for that would become more and more pervasive, I think, and important.
Thank you. I'm going to ask Becky. I know Stacy has a few closing comments, but Becky, with the pandemic, and I know that that the focus certainly of MEP is manufacturing, but with the interrelationship between logistics, distribution, warehousing, e-commerce, etc. Have you received more inquiries from manufacturers who have had a great impact on their operations due to the pandemic? And are they aware of some of the challenges of the digitalization of manufacturing in terms of addressing those challenges?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, at MEP, we're blessed that we have a cybersecurity program as well. And so when a lot of people have those kind of issues, I've got internal folks that I can refer them to, and then they can make a determination what needs to happen. But one of the things that manufacturing has been struggling with for a while has been the idea of the digitization of supply chain, and trying to make sure that those communications were safe and effective and understood on the shop floor. And so we're seeing a lot more emphasis being put on those kind of things, as well as the fact that the pandemic forced manufacturers to start looking at more hands-off ways of approaching on-the-job training. The traditional shadowing, and I'm going to talk into your ear while I'm teaching you to do something, wasn't working so well with masks and floor noise. So we're seeing a lot more integration of technology, Google Glasses and VR and AR and all sorts of different ways to integrate that. And that even extended as far as human resources, that we're doing Zoom interview calls with people, and we're onboarding employees, in a distanced manner. So the pandemic has impacted definitely not only e-commerce, cyber hygiene, which is an excellent point, and even if it's just getting people to not open emails that look
Right.
suspicious, right? That has been just huge in manufacturing and has brought them to a new realization that, you know what, there might just be other ways of doing things. Manufacturers are very good at pivoting because they have to by definition, and this was no different. So we've seen them do that. Do they have a ways to go? Sure, but I think pretty much everybody does in terms of making sure that what they're doing is safe, appropriate, and is going to, in the long run, give them the results that they're looking for.
Well, thank you. And I think we'll wrap up. I'll turn it back to not Stacy, but Mike in a minute. But I want to thank Joe Zaccaro, Nilajan Banerjee, Neil Christopher, and Becky Kemp for what I hope all of you attendees agree. It has been a very interesting and informative discussion about manufacturing and the challenges, particularly around workforce that manufacturing faces, and that you all agree there are lots of resources out there, and this is an industry that we absolutely have to support in this region, in this state, because it's growing, it's important, they're good jobs, they're career jobs, and we just need to make sure that more and more people understand that. Mike, back to you.
Michelle, thank you. And I want to thank all the panelists and the sponsors. This has been very, very interesting. And I just want to end, actually picking up with something that Becky just said or alluded to, and you did too, about new ways of doing things. That's going to be the norm, and it's going to be about new technology. So I'd like to put in a plug. If you like the conversations about what are the new technologies transforming manufacturing, go to our RMI website. We have a conference coming up on June 8th. We're going to be talking about 5G and the new platforms that manufacturers will be developing. We're going to be talking about quantum computing. We're going to be talking about digital twins, which is in the realm of 3D printing. But Neil, because of you put us on to Transfer VR, and we have a nationally successful organization that's going to be talking about virtual reality training. And you were the one that suggested we connect with them. So just to add to this, there's this conference that will show you, take a peek at these new technologies. We have some outstanding national thought leaders that are going to be part of this. And of course, I want to thank Stacy too for organizing this event. So Stacy, with that, I'm going to turn it back over to you.
Thanks, Mike. Actually, I don't have anything else. I just want to let everyone know that we'll be sending out an email today with a recording to today's program and links to some of the things that were mentioned from Becky and others if you want to reach out to them and get in touch with them about any of their programs. So that's it. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks a lot, Stacy and Mike.
Thanks, Michelle, for moderating. Bye, everybody.
So long.